Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. Good to see you. I am the T-shirt historian, and this is my friend Grim and our friend the Eclectic Goat.
The croaky goat today.
Croaky Goat. I'm glad you came back on again. So you didn't hate us so much that you didn't want to be here ever again.
I mean, I don't know that every week is an option, but yes, we made today work.
Okay. Well, I mean, as often as you can get on, we'll take you, man. Because it's just awesome. I love having you on. Plus, we always find really interesting topics. We end up talking about half of them backstage.
I mean, I am so plugged up. I apparently suggested a topic and didn't even realize it. So
yes, you did.
You're gonna have to pardon my brain fog.
It's all right.
As I said, my role today is to pretend I am not on enough sinus meds to floor an elephant.
Well, I'm going to start off today with a little something. It's kind of sort of a rebuttal, more just kind of a generalized sort of statement that is kind of useful to everybody. Some weeks ago, we made comment on a product generated by a very vocal individual who decided to put up a rebuttal video, and in the process called me, basically he said that I was not classy, or that I thought he thought I had more class than to have Daniel or Grim on the panel, or have, when they were obviously didn't care for him. And my very simple rebuttal to that is, it's kind of like, hey, Grim's been my friend for some time now. He's always going to be on my shows if he's able to. And I'm grateful because his expertise is good. His insight is good on just about everything that we talk about. Daniel's kind of a new addition, but I've enjoyed talking with him. He's been very helpful to me. So he's going to be on when he's on. And I'm sorry if you're having problems with those two guys. Now, I have nothing in particular personally against this individual, but the thing is, that person decided to write a game system and publish it on Drive-Thru RPG. He's charging money for this product, and that's just one of the things that we do. I mean, you saw us, we took a look at Sentience last week. Right? And that's a professionally kickstarted product, published by Modiphius. And we didn't always have the nicest things to say about it either. We had some good things to say about it, but a lot of what we had to say was kind of in the negative. Then that's the thing. We are consumers of game products as much as we are anything else. And like any consumer, you want a decent product when you buy it, if you're spending money on it. Therefore, it's your right to complain about a product if you don't like how it's been presented, or there are certain aspects of it you don't care for. Now, in my case, I don't think I've ever said anything too harsh about this particular product, other than some of the maths seem a little bit odd. In the fact that apparently a master rogue or something can produce a set of heavy leather armor, like in, I forget what the exact number was. I think it was like 4 hours. Maybe it was 2 or something. But it was ridiculous. I'm kind of like, but basically, a master rogue can produce heavy leather armor faster than, say, a saddle maker can build a saddle. And they're kind of a comparable amount of work on those, but I thought the numbers, the math on that was kind of messed up. Plus, the formatting of the entire thing was overly long and didn't really look very presentable, having absolutely no artwork. And these are just really mild critiques. It's not like I deep dove into the system and, started tearing apart how good or how bad it was. I suppose I could have been much more harsh if I really wanted to be. But the point is, if you publish something and you put it out there for people to buy, expect critique. That's what's going to happen. I mean, grow a thicker skin, because people are going to say bad things about your product if they don't like it. They'll say great things about your product if they do. But, you got to expect the good with the bad. And sometimes you just get the random person who just absolutely hates you, and, they're going to say everything bad about your product no matter what you put out. So, but once you publish a product, you're pretty much at the mercy of other people's opinion. So I would say get used to it now. Get comfortable with it. And if you really care about your product and you care about your customers, be prepared to make changes. It's not hard. I mean, what do you guys think?
Was his issue with the review or the people reviewing it? Or yes?
Both, I think.
Because, I mean, that's the nature of reviews, is that sometimes they're not going to be nice. I mean, even if you sent somebody, despite the fact that, statistics tells us that by sending people free stuff, they are more likely to give you a positive review, it doesn't guarantee they're going to give you a positive review. And how would you ever trust reviewers? I mean, nobody trusts Rotten Tomatoes anymore because if, we found out that they were paying people for positive reviews.
Yeah, shills.
Do we want all reviewers to be totally untrustworthy because, like, they said something mean about my thing?
Exactly. I mean, what would be the point of reviewing something if people weren't reviewing it honestly? And honestly, it wasn't so much a review. It was just kind of a cursory glance at the material presented. It wasn't a deep dive. It wasn't a page by page or anything like that. It wasn't even an in-depth critique. It was just kind of like I spotted this wrong with it immediately from the posted pages. So, and I can't count the number of times I have bought books from DriveThruRPG in hardback only for less than a month later to get a notification from DriveThruRPG, hey, product, whatever it is, has been updated. And I'm just banging my face against the desk. Because here I have a hardback copy of it sitting on my shelf, and now it's been updated. So
yeah.
Get
an editor, people. No, it doesn't have to be me. Just get an editor. Period.
This particular person, who we're not naming, which I approve of, I can get het up about a lot of things, but it does take quite a concerted effort to genuinely piss me off. And this person has genuinely pissed me off. We gave him the benefit of the doubt before. He's clout chasing. Let's just not talk about him and just use this as a springboard to talk about, reviewing, editing, publishing, all of those other things, and ignore that guy.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I don't even know who that guy is, so that's fine with me.
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
Let's just say it's no wonder his mathematics was off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it always weirds me out, this whole, like, you had someone I don't like on your channel once, and therefore you're terrible. Like, there are shows I have said I would prefer not to be on that panel with that person, but that doesn't mean I hate the person that chooses to have them on the panel. Like, that's just silly.
It is. And Kip Marlowe says, don't think of an updated rulebook as outdated. Think of it as a collector's item. There is one particular case I will claim that. And that is, I have the Spelljammer book that was released for 5th edition with the offensive Hadozi stuff in it. And I only purchased it specifically for that material because I knew they were going to be changing it, altering it, and taking it out of the game. So I bought that as a collector's item, figuring, maybe 15, 20 years down the road, somebody will say, I really wish I could find that copy of that Spelljammer with the original Hadozi material in there, and I'll be like, I got it right here.
Rare
$200.
racist edition of Spelljammer, $200.
Yes. 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 Racist Hadozi edition of Spelljammer on eBay, $250.
Like the Kissing Lincoln's penny.
Here you go. I don't know. I accidentally have 4 copies of our dear friend Victor Gorchev's modern. What the hell is it called?
Necessities?
Yes, Modern Necessities. I have 4 copies of it. 4. And I think the only reason I have 4 is because he made a change at some point, and I ended up buying a new pair of books for it, and now I can't tell one from the other. So I have 4 of these things. I'd really like to give away 3 of them. But so far nobody really wants to, contribute to the channel or anything like that for me to, to encourage me to want to, because I would love to do giveaways. I have so much stuff I'd love to give away, guys, but I got to get a little something in return. A little something. I mean, just at least to cover my shipping, if nothing else.
Sell raffle tickets.
I should do that if I thought people would buy them.
Bucket ticket. Sorry.
Most giveaways, like, the person has to pay the shipping?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I should. I could do that maybe, but then again, none of the Australians would want to pay.
True.
Just slap it on a wallaby, it'll find its way home.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Luke Rella.
Put it on a sea turtle. But yeah, I mean, it's easy to go to print and have a ton of mistakes in your book. It's just, your brain kind of glazes over these things. And I unfortunately think that's why a lot of people are using AI stuff like Grammarly and everything to check all their stuff to make sure that it's okay.
Well, I mean, that's fine for some basic stuff, but Grammarly, I mean, some of the mistakes that AI makes are absolutely hysterical.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you have a publisher, 2 writers, and an editor on the same panel, so I think we're well placed to have this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I obviously do not, have a blanket AI terrible stance, but it's like any other tool. Like, tools are to be used for a specific purpose, and when you start generalizing those tools for everything, you have to use the tool, not let the tool use you.
Indeed. All right, carry on.
So I do some light editing for people, sort of little more than a read through, really, just looking for anything glaring. They say the best way to find mistakes in your book is to publish it and then glance at a random page 6 months later. Then the errors become glaring. So that's very effective. So the thing you really have to keep in mind with most indie publishing and RPG indie publishing in particular is nobody has any money. And so that's why it is so tempting to skip things that don't seem essential, like editing, like hiring an editor, because that's more money that you're probably not going to get back.
Well, I mean, to counterpoint that, though, you have the big company, you know which one I'm talking about, the one over on the coast. And you still catch mistakes in their writing. And this is after they've had, 3 sensitivity readers go over every single document?
Yeah, but they're sensitivity readers, not editors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean...
They don't know how to spell or do grammar.
Oh, okay. I can't read this, therefore it is racist. Your words are too big. That's racist.
Yeah. So Grammarly particularly, right? I think it is a really useful tool if you're already somewhat confident in your own writing and you're willing to check all of its suggestions and not just blanket say, yeah, go ahead, make all these.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't ever pick change all or accept all or whatever it is.
No, never.
No.
Go through them all. Read the sentence twice. Do I really want to change that? Is it making an aesthetic change and wiping out my voice, or is it just correcting the grammar and the spelling? You got to be careful with it. I've had texts from people to put into layout that someone had obviously just gone accept all without looking at all the Grammarly changes, and some paragraphs, because it's RPG language, which is specialist technical writing, really it was just converted into complete gibberish and I've had to send it back. So yeah.
There's also things like I once did a short story. I never did anything with it, but I once did a short story. It was kind of a Lovecraftian thing. And the guy in it is it's written in a very dreamlike language, and the guy in it is sort of slowly going more and more insane. And at one point he believes he's talking to a shoe, and the shoe responds in a soulful voice, except I intentionally spelled it soul, like the sole of a shoe. Grammarly would have had a hissy fit over that. And if I'd hit accept all, like that would have, it's supposed to be a hint as to how crazy he's going, that he begins to see the world this way.
And yet in other contexts, it's very good at catching homophones. So words that spell differently but sound the same, for anyone out there who doesn't know. Yeah, it's good for catching those because it will spot them and it will say, did you mean this or this? And that's quite useful. It has its place, but it's not a one-for-one replacement.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying, is that I don't have a blanket, obviously, hatred for AI, but it's just important that it get used for what it's good at and not what it's not good at.
Well, speaking of AI and the use of it to promote, changes in grammar, this one's going to blow your mind. I participate in a play-by-post, chat style RP on pretty much every day of the week for fun. And I used to be really proud of the fact that I could, generate some pretty good sized paragraphs when I wanted to, or I could, keep my, my sentences kind of short and terse and quick to, depending on what I wanted to do. But over the last few, years, there were these folks showing up called paragraph role players who literally would just sit there and you'd sit there and you'd wait on them and you'd wait on them and you wait on them to post, and because they were writing an entire paragraph to cover all the stuff that they wanted to say. And I'm just kind of like, okay, so you're basically writing the great American novel for a dark fantasy, chat game. You do understand how ridiculous this sounds, but I mean, it's like, okay, it's people's immersion. Let them do that. Lately, I've been noticing, because I'm familiar with it and I know how to catch it, people are using Chat GPT to create their paragraph posts. And they're not even doing it well, because Chat GPT, when it spits out, like flavor text or dialogue correction or paragraphs, has a certain style that it does it in. And these people are basically just copy pasting wholesale the entire thing into the chat.
I mean, now, why even roleplay at that point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I understand it. I mean, I've tried it myself just to see what would happen. And it's funny how, you could type a little sentence in to Chat GPT, this character walks over to Grim and gently tugs his mustache, right? And then Chat GPT will throw out like an entire paragraph of, like, the way that your character did it and the sound of the material squeaking as the cat suit that they're wearing rubs against them, and, the color of the sky and what emotions were going through that. And then it'll add in some dialogue as well, usually, and it's amazing what it can do. But at the same time, I'm also kind of going, well, this is cool and it's helpful and I can understand why people are using it. But at the same point, it's like, yeah, at what point am I actually having a, role play with another person? And, at what point could I just, forget all this crap and just go over to Janitor AI and, go pick one of the billions of different characters to have a long, mostly consensual discussion about whatever.
Well, but that feels to me like, if you said, "Hey, would you like to play a game of chess?" and I said, "Sure," and then immediately brought up a chess master program and just left, and just let the computer play for me.
Yeah.
Why play the game at that point? Like,
I think there's a bit of a gray zone there, because quite often the output you get from AI can be a starting point, and you kind of sculpt it and you trim it and you shift it and you change it and you add to it. If I've been tired and writing characters, I've been known to put the sort of simple thing, what happened or what they're saying, into ChatGPT or something, and then say, translate that in the most grandiloquent and pompous way you can, and it'll get that, and then I'll fiddle with it to get it just how I like it. So I think
right, but I'm talking about if they're cutting and pasting it from ChatGPT,
yeah,
like, why are you even playing the game? Like, you're not playing the game. You're just ChatGPT is playing your game for you.
Yeah. Now, I think it's okay to use it to punch up dialogue and something. Like if I write something and I think this is pretty good, but it could be better, or I want to add more technical details, but I really don't know how to. Then asking ChatGPT to kind of make it sound more interesting seems like an okay use of it, and I try to stick to stuff like that. But I don't want it to just wholesale, pull entire, phrases and emotions and everything else out of my character's butt that may not be appropriate. So I always, double check and read it first before I post it up. But
the other thing is that, like, how do you develop, or other people? I mean, it's like one thing when you're drugged out on sinus meds or just not feeling good. But if you're consistently doing that, how do you ever learn to make anything sound more interesting on your own if you just get dependent on ChatGPT to do it for you? And that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I start, if instead of using tools, we're becoming dependent on them. It's one of the reasons I hate my cell phone, because it's one thing to use a phone, it's another to have your entire life dependent on it.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm kind of sort of hinting at as well. Is it's like the guy on the other end of the screen could be let's just put it like it is, a shit role player. Literally, somebody who can't spell, somebody who isn't good with dialogue, maybe, doesn't even, barely has a high school education and doesn't write worth a damn. But they want to participate in the role play, and they don't want to sound like, complete fuds when they get in there and start talking. So yeah, they use the chat program, and all of a sudden it's like all the stupid stuff that they say comes out really eloquent sounding, and whatever else they want. And I think I have a hard time totally dismissing the AI based on that, because I'm kind of like, it's found a way for these people to be able to interact and communicate on a level where other people can enjoy what they write as well, and they don't come off sounding silly. Versus people who just, type in one sentence after you've given them, 2 paragraphs worth of exposition and emotional content and depth. And then they just kind of that's cool. Now what do we do?
I don't know. Maybe it's just that I I'm old school enough that I grew up with you dealt with sounding silly until you learned how to play.
Yeah.
Kit, I agree. The solution to could be better is practice, not farming out to stochastic parity. I agree, but not everybody's going to put the time required in to get better at it. You know?
Well, but I think that's what led us to, like, you know, I've always, okay, this is going to be my hot take for the day. Well, it's going to be a hot take for the day.
Okay.
One of the things I don't like about 5e is what it seems to have done to players. And I think I've said this other places, but players I have who are great in any other system, you know, they strive, they, you know, have characters die, they get injured, they get back up, and they move on. You put them into 5e, and the minute their character, like, gets hurt, they throw a screaming hissy fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just made for shallower players in a lot of ways. And I feel like getting dependent on ChatGPT for your games is going to result in the same thing. Like, that people aren't going to learn how to roleplay. They're not going to learn how to play at all. They're just going to get ChatGPT to do, you know, they're going to get ChatGPT to build their characters because they don't like the character building. Which means they're not really going to understand the system. They're going to get the GM to explain the rules to them because they don't want to be bothered to read the book, which is also what's happening with 5e. You know, GMs are mainly buying the books. And nobody's going to really learn how to play anymore. It's just going to become like, I don't know, not even video games require, you know, more engagement. And again, I'm not saying, like, I totally bash the idea of using AI when you're having a bad day or for certain things. I'm saying that using it for everything all the time just seems like it's going to really, and again, there are people with certain, like, disability type things. That may also be an exception. You know, only Sith speak in absolutes. I'm not speaking in absolutes.
Right.
Just saying that overall, I think it could be really damaging to the games if that becomes a regular thing.
I feel like we've had this conversation in a slightly different context when we talk about role play double L versus role play LE. You know, you have that guy at the table who is like, I seduced the dragon. 20. Right? That's not particularly engaging, where, you know, that guy having access to ChatGPT and using it to give him a speech to seduce a dragon, which I'm going to put in a minute just out of curiosity. You know, that's maybe slightly better, and it's an opportunity to learn. But in my experience, those people are never really that comfortable with roleplay in the first place. They're there to kill things and take their stuff. But I also feel, I also feel like the big stream shows, like your Critical Roles and so on, they've created this really high expectation, and people want to be good straight away, and they don't want to be shit for a while they serve their apprenticeship. You know, they want to be, they want that to be their experience, and for the vast majority of people, that's never going to be their experience. Even seasoned role players who've, you know, been in the hobby for years. You know, you shouldn't all want the same thing, and it's unattainable, right? You have to see what AI says about seducing dragons.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, when we play your Fabula Ultima game on Sundays, we don't always have the best dialogue or the best lines or all that sort of stuff, but it's a real game. It's really working, and, you know, it's actually real players generating their own real responses to whatever's going on. It's not a case of, you know, we didn't filter all of our responses through an AI first and then, you know, spit out, you know, read out word for word what it said to the audience. You know, we didn't go off a pre-scripted script or anything. We play as the situation comes on, and sometimes that makes it more interesting too. I mean, like, I couldn't have gotten nearly as many fart and poop jokes out of last week if I had AI doing it all for me.
Yes.
Well,
Sense
the
of that
other
kind of thing.
the other thing is that on the rare occasion I get to play, I'm sort of noted for my like weird thinking around corners way of solving problems in games. And if I were to turn things, I mean, I've probably frustrated a GM a time or two, but I've also saved a party a time or two. And ChatGPT would never think of like the weird ass crap that goes on in my head.
No.
You know, so yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it could make a cool speech, but like I care less about the cool speech and how I sound to other people than am I actually emotionally invested in the game? Am I having a good time? Am I engaging with the people that I'm at the table virtually or otherwise with? And as I do think that you're right about new players. I once a month do a group specifically for people who haven't role played, specifically so that they can get used to the idea without feeling like they're in over their head, you know, with other people who haven't role played before. They all initially thought I was going to live stream it, and I was like, no, I would never do that to you. But like, and when they get to the point where they feel comfortable going and finding other groups, I'll find a new group of people who've never played before and want to learn. Because I mean, it was 35 years ago. But I remember being that new person. I remember like being kind of shy and awkward and not really sure what I was doing. And I think that's a stage everyone has to go through in order to like get the rewards of what is a very cool hobby, in my opinion.
Indeed. Maliquin has a good question. He says, how would they even use it at the table without having their nose in the phone the whole time? Okay. Mal, as far as online games go, you know, like where you're RPing over Discord or something like that, it's very easy to... you're already on the computer, so it's very easy to... You know, literally, you do have your nose in the computer the entire time. So that's not hard. But I brought up more than once how I DM'd a game at a person's house where the owner of the house, the guy who actually asked me to run the game, literally had his face in the phone the entire game. Every session.
Yeah, that's become a real issue trying to run too.
Uh-huh. The only way I ever got him to disengage with the phone is whenever I spoke to him directly in character and like was basically forcing him to respond to me in character. But even that got old after a while because it was like, you know, I've got like 6 or 7 other players at the table who also want to interact. And, you know, here's this dude with his nose in the phone the whole time.
So I don't do electronics at my house on Saturdays. And of course, there's nothing I can do. We rotate where we play the in-person game that I run. And so every 3 months it's here. And I always tell people that, like, unless you have a medical issue, you know, please leave your phones in your car. And that has actually been really useful to getting people out of the habit, even when they're not at my house. I mean, it's a slow process. But the fact that, you know, I'm now back to running with books instead of off the laptop, and that, you know, every 3 months they're actually having to fully engage is, you know, and I know a lot of people that are just going to a like phones in the basket policy because it's just so hard to compete with, you know, ding, 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 ding from the phone all the time.
My flesh groups have always been early tech adopters. So people have their character sheets on their laptops or their phones. They have their dice rollers on their laptops and their phones. We have a shared drive at that house that has all the characters and PDFs of some of the books if we need them for reference, things like that. So we're not quite as anti-tech, but it can be distracting. But it's also quite a large group, so it can take quite a while for things to come around to your turn, which is the other aspect.
Flesh groups. Can I borrow that? Because
yes.
that is entertaining.
I normally say meat space, but I was inspired.
It's not that I'm anti-tech. It's that it got to the point where I couldn't run a game because somebody was like, it was just getting so bogged down with people on the phone all the time. And I have people in my group who cheat, so real dice is absolutely a thing at my table.
Oh yeah. Tony has been posting a lot here, and I hate to not respond to all their stuff, but this is one that we could almost do an entire episode dedicated to, just real group courtesy, be focused on the game, and after the game, take out the trash. Yeah, don't smoke at the table. Don't, if you're the guy with flatulence, yeah, all those things. Yeah. And my favorite one, of course, is Cheeto fingers.
Yeah, I will say, so when I host, I not only run the game, I cook dinner for everybody. And
wow.
I also inevitably end up doing all of the cleanup afterwards, and that does get a little bit frustrating sometimes, especially if we run late. So yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think it's awesome that you cook for people. I wouldn't even say you had to go that far. I mean,
well, I enjoy it.
I'm good if everybody, buys their own food and shows up at the table and eats, that's cool too. If somebody wants to buy something for everybody, that's good too. We had a group.
It's just sort of like, take your soda cans out of the game room and put them in the bucket that like all the returnables go in. That's all I ask.
Yes, Kylock, you finally caught a stream. And good to see you, bud. Been a while.
Quick, everyone leave.
Yeah. Don't smoke at the table. Good thing. Oh, Eraserhead, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah, the smoke breaks where everybody has to go outside and go puff, either on their vape or on their regular cigarettes or even the MJ.
Yeah, that would be what he's referencing.
Yeah. The jazz cabbage does get a bit much sometimes. Yeah, don't rip a massive bong hit right before your turn. Wait until afterwards.
James, I tried Tabletop Simulator and I really found it to be clunky. It doesn't feel like I'm at a real table because it's like I'm sitting here having to constantly click and pick up things and manually turn things over. And
sounds like a video game.
It is basically. It's a video game that's designed to run a tabletop game, and the purpose is so that you can basically play it with other people long distances. But it's very pedantic because you have to sit there and if you want to move a piece, you have to literally use the mouse, grab the piece, and then move it on the screen to wherever you want it moved. But unfortunately, I mean, that's not a big deal with checkers or chess. But when you're talking about something like Zombicide, yeah. And apparently Kingdom Death Monster has a version of it out too, which I picked up because it wasn't too expensive. And I have found it to be similarly clunky. And when you're trying to manipulate all of those cards and character sheets and miniatures and dice, and it's just I'd just rather have a real game with real people. I can't do this.
Yeah. I currently do one in-person game, the occasional one shot at the local store, and then 2 online games every month. So, and if I could figure out how to justify it, I'd probably do more, but I do love running. So I will play pretty much in any way people want to play. Still, Foundry has gotten better, but man, I would love to have more in-person games.
Yeah, that's the best way, of course, but it is what it is, One of the things too is people talk about just playing the game for the dungeon experience. All I want to do is get to the dungeon, kill monsters, get treasure, and all that sort of stuff. And
take up wargaming.
No, I mean just board gaming. Actually, I mean there's lots of really good board games. Yeah, there's lots of board games that do it very, very well. There's Descent. There's Massive Darkness 2. There's Talisman. There's There's a ton of board games where all you do is go down into the dungeon, get treasure, kill monsters, come back out, and sometimes they even have narrative structures that you can enjoy, like folklore.
I do think that those people tend to like that kind of game and really like collecting stuff, though, because
Mhm.
they do tend to be the people that have a lot of dice and a lot of minis and
Oh
things
yeah,
like that. And war games
I-
allow you to have a ridiculous number of minis and still just kill things a lot.
true. I used to be a dice goblin, but I've since stopped my wastrel goblin ways because, frankly, it's kind of like a pastime that doesn't go anywhere. It's like, yeah, you can buy the coolest, neatest dice, but if the other people at your table are like, okay, then it's like, okay, well then why am I buying this shit? I mean, I bought this to impress other people, or did I buy it to impress me, or because I thought it was cool? If the answer was I thought it was cool, then that's cool. But now I have a fully functional set of dice. I don't need any more.
I probably count as a dice goblin. I do have a bunch. But my husband is a Warhammer person, so therefore I just look at the entire room of the house that is packed floor to ceiling with minis, and suddenly my dice collecting doesn't feel so bad.
Miniatures can take up some space, yeah. And as I've said it here on more than one occasion, at this point I have so many boxes of shame that if I started today, I might finish all of my miniatures in about 5 years.
If you did nothing
because if I did nothing else. And that's just mainly because, I like board games, and I bought a lot of board game collections. And, when you get a board game collection, especially off Kickstarter, it's like, we're going to give you all these miniatures in the base game, but look, we'll kickstart all these other ones. And so now, instead of 150 miniatures you got with the base game, you have 550 miniatures because of all the expansions and add-on packs and Kickstarter bonuses.
Oh,
pretty soon
if Kickstarter had been around during the 90s, like, he would have been bankrupt long before we ever met. He still has like shelves full of stuff from like old GW like 80 metal minis that have never even been opened. So yeah.
I know that there's kind of an obsession.
There's this fine line between, collecting and hoarding.
Mm-hmm.
He rides that line like really fine.
I've tapered off on a lot of my game buying stuff because, frankly, it's of no use to me now. It's kind of like, the friend I used to play tabletop role-playing games with, both of them have both passed away in the last few years. And so it's kind of like, now I have tons of boxes of shame that I'm not in a hurry to paint because I'll never play them. So,
well, that's one of the things I was able to convince him to weed out some of his, is that the more of them he has, the less he plays, because he gets overwhelmed by the sheer amount of stuff he has.
Yes.
And the more he cleans out, the more painting he does, the more playing he does. And the less anxiety I have. Yeah. We have this joke that he is a pack rat and I am a toss possum. He wants to keep everything, and if as far as I'm concerned, if it hasn't been used in the last year, it goes in the dumpster.
Yeah. The secondary market for used board games is, the fact is, it's like, unless it's an unopened, pristine set and you're a scalper, you're not going to get out of it what you put into it, for sure.
Yeah.
What part of 1980s never been opened boxes did you?
Oh, in that case, yeah. But I mean, it's like, I have a few of those boxes now. I mean, like I got like the whole second season of Cthulhu Death May Die, and I didn't even bother to open it. I'm just kind of like, I've already kickstarted the third season. I don't even want to open the second one. But the only reason
every time I get into a war game, it goes bankrupt or bust or something happens. So I've given up on that and stick to board games or very, very small skirmish games like 1666.
Yeah, that happens. But the only reason I did do the Cthulhu Death May Die third season is because it has Godzilla, Okay, that's bottom line. I want to get not a life size so much, but a miniature scale Godzilla on the table at some point and watch the players just absolutely, shit themselves. Because I already have the giant Cthulhu that's the same size.
I run enough horror games that I don't know that I would ever actually play that game, but it's the first game I've ever looked at that I just really wanted for the minis because I was like, I know how I would repurpose that for this game instead.
Well, that was my initial reason to buy into Zombicide. Because I thought, oh, wow, all these really cool looking miniatures and you get a ton of them for this much money? And it's a game on top of that? This could be awesome. And now I have, lots of Zombicide.
It is still a cost-effective way to get lots of zombie figures.
It is. That and other things, too. There's a lot more than just zombies in Zombicide these days. But, I have Sun Wukong now. So that's awesome.
The only Zombicide I own is the prison one.
Oh, yeah, Prison Outbreak.
Someone bought me as a joke because I used to work in the state prison.
It's actually a fun game, but
yeah, we played it once on New Year's, and we were all really drunk. And at like 4 a.m., I finally just got frustrated and started telling everybody what to do so that we could end the game.
Silverlock, I love Cthulhu Death May Die also. I really like and here we get into some mechanics discussion. It has a big element of risk versus reward because you can keep pushing your character to do cooler and cooler things by pushing their sanity meter further and further, where they develop more powers because your characters have a track for their sanity. And every time you get a certain number of sanity points down the track, you develop a new power. The problem is, if your track ever hits the end, your character goes insane and you lose the game. Or at least that character loses. So I'm very big on risk versus reward mechanics in games. I think those are a lot of fun because I like to play those odds. And I like to see players play those odds. But I've noticed that people don't do them. In fact, this is something I thought I'd bring up for you, Grim.
Mm.
In Fabula Ultima, we have the Fabula points, right?
Yep.
And do you notice how very little people are actually using them?
Yeah, that happens in a lot of games, and with most players, they like to sit on whatever bonuses that they have until they really, 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 really need them. Right? And that even happens when we're playing tabletopless, right? Because we have the tip option where viewers can tip to give rerolls, right? And we bank those, but then the players just sit on them and don't use them, even though we should be using them to encourage people to tip more. So even there, you can't get out of that gamer mindset. Keep the shinies.
I run into that. I run a lot of Numenera, and the idea is that you have ciphers, which are basically like one-use high-tech items, equivalent of magic, as from a medieval perspective. And you can only carry so many at a time, and you're supposed to use them up and throw them away and move on to the next thing. But people don't. They hoard them, which means that they then can't pick up like the next thing because they can't carry, more than 2 or 3 at a time. And I have never figured out how to discourage that behavior, and it really kind of messes up one of the core points of the game. So, yeah.
The only thing I can figure out that works for getting people to use up those points is kind of like Torg had that same thing with possibility points that people could hoard up and spend to get extra bonuses. The first thing you can do is, as a GM, get them hyped up for spending them. Which is basically, it's like, this is really cool, but if you burned a possibility point, you could, make this even bigger, and And then you kind of get them you're encouraging them to spend their points that way. The other thing is making like a leaky pool of points where
use them or lose them.
Yeah, use them or lose them, or or you can you're always going to start the game with 1, but at the end of the game you will always be reduced back to 1 no matter how many you earned in the game. So it's kind of like a case of if you don't use them, then you've just wasted them. And Kit Marlowe, dude, I miss you so much, man. I really do. I miss you. Hoarding bennies is another pernicious influence of video games. Players are anticipating a play loop with a big bad evil guy that they need to keep the bennies for. Yeah, and that is true. And yeah, single-use item hoarding is a long and time-honored tradition. I know a player who is really bad about that.
Except every time people like try and play tabletop RPGs like they're video games, I have to resist the urge to just give them like 90% of the loot that they pick up is totally useless junk that they can't use. Because that's also a trait of video games, and I always want to say, if you're going to play this like a video game, I'm going to treat it like a video game.
And I mean, and maybe you should. I mean, maybe that's a good way to encourage people to, like in our case, spend Fabula points, is to have bosses that have multiple forms and things like that. It's kind of like, okay, well, you didn't burn any of your points on that one. Too bad, because here comes the second form, or the third form, or the fifth form. Just go full Elden Ring with it.
I have literally had people like die rather than like use a cipher that would have saved them. Or get like dragged off into unknown tortures rather than used a cipher. And the number of times that like something terrible happened to the party, and then I like look at someone's character sheet and I was like, why did you not do this thing? And the whole party, the whole table looks at them and they're like, so you totally could have saved our asses with that. And their response just is, well, yeah, but I thought it might be more important later.
You're too heavy. I can't pull you up. Drop the wheel of cheese. I might need it.
I mean, I don't know how you get people to get out of that mentality so much. It's just you have to force them to do it, either by ramping up the difficulty to the point where they have to spend those points in order to survive, or
I think Kit's point is pretty good though, because now that I'm thinking about it, the players in my group that play the most video games are the ones that are the most likely to hoard like that.
It's true though. I mean, and I'm kind of guilty of hanging on to Fabula points a little bit too, but I do try to use them on occasion, as kind of tactically as possible. Like if I don't like the outcome of something, I'm always grim. Is like, can I reverse this, or can I stop this from happening, or can I get a second roll, or we can't stop fumbles with Fabula points, but we can do just about anything else with them short of that. And then nobody's ever earned an Ultima point, so still waiting for one of those to pop up.
The other thing about Numenera is that experience points are not just for leveling up. They're also for developing new skills. You can, spend them to, have Deus Ex Machina show up, or, have a, reroll or something like that. But nobody wants to use them for those things because they want to tier up as fast as possible. And, and that's another one of those things where I think like this whole idea that leveling as quickly as possible instead of just kind of enjoying the ride getting there.
Heretical Nerd says, I would think that making combat encounters high lethality would solve the issue. You would be right in most games cases. However, I hate to say this.
You have the players that will just die rather than...
Well, there's that, and there's also the fact that in Fabula Ultima, you're not going to die, because it's literally written into the rules that the characters can't die unless it's mutually agreed on.
Yeah. but you can choose to be captured, which is actually quite a nice option.
Which, of course, players would rather die than get captured.
Quite often.
Yeah.
Paradoxical.
Everyone knows they're going to die in my games, so.
And
that's the thing about running almost entirely like hardcore horror games. Everyone just goes into it just accepting that. I always say, I don't kill players, but I don't stop players from killing themselves, and someone will always do something dumb. Doesn't matter how long they've been playing.
Kit says, paradoxically, one encourages Cypher uses by handing them out like candy, which sort of undermines their specialness. There is that element too. Yeah, if you're just giving them away all the time. But then again, I used to do that stuff for Torg. I used to invent reasons to give people possibility points in order to encourage them to spend them. And sometimes it was kind of funny too, because it would almost become a game of, let's see just how high we can pump the dice result by burning possibility points and spending cards and all this other stuff. And then setting the difficulties way too high.
Ciphers aren't really supposed to be that. Artifacts are supposed to be special, but ciphers aren't really supposed to be that special. They're supposed to be, not common, but not uncommon either. I mean, you can't pick them up from a store, but you're specifically going into areas where there are likely to be a lot of them.
Well, I've often thought that the best way to actually replicate sort of action movie genre conventions in tabletop would be to have one stat, luck. And when your luck runs out, that's when you finally get shot or you screw something up or whatever. And up until you run out of luck, you're fine, because that's the way most action movies work. The hero's untouchable until he finally gets a gut shot or runs across some broken glass or whatever, and then everything goes to hell. So maybe that's a way to look at some of this.
Well, I always thought that one of the things I used to do to encourage people to burn through all their possibility points in Torg was you get players, you kind of set the tone that it's high action and you can literally do whatever you want to, because you're bending the rules of possibility and causality in your favor to be able to do it. So I would try to get them to do crazy stuff in order to set really, really high difficulties that you couldn't normally achieve with just their dice roll alone, and force them to burn cards, burn possibility points, and do all these other things to try to get them. So I was like, okay, so you're gonna climb out of the fuselage of this 1940s aircraft onto the wing of the plane with under machine gun fire, leap to the other plane wing, and then make your way to the cockpit and, prise the cockpit door open and then, hit the pilot in the face with a bottle of rum or whatever. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to give you a difficulty of, 75. We'll see if you can see how many possibility points and dice and stuff you can burn. I'll give you that chance. And just let them try it. Because if they pull it off, it's just like, it's a huge moment for them.
So Indiana Jones, then.
Basically, yeah, because that was a style of play I used to encourage. It's one of the reasons why it was so much fun. And as I've said on many occasions, it's one of the few games I love to run, because even if it's not your turn, you're sitting there with a hand of cards that can change the outcome of a battle or a dice roll or anything in a moment's notice. All you got to do is just play it on anyone else's turn. Like if one of your friends is, it's currently their combat round and they're getting the snot beat out of them by the, evil, specter or whatever, then, and somebody plays the reverse of fortune card or something. And it's like all of a sudden, the specter, trips, falls and impales itself on a tree branch or something. It's just that kind of gaming is really fun to me. I like seeing players being excited and eagerly participating and not just sitting around and waiting for their turn, Yeah. And that's the hard thing to do with gaming.
It's one of the things I always liked about feng shui, which I call that because it differentiates it from feng shui. Okay, I know how it's pronounced. That everyone always tries to go for the most outlandish descriptions on their turn because that gives you bonuses, not penalties.
Oh my God.
like it would in any other game. So,
Can you imagine them playing feng shui with Chat GPT?
it would actually probably be quite good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you come up with for your kissing dragon, by the way?
Do you want to know?
Sure. Read it.
Okay.
Oh, the seduction thing.
Well, first read what you wrote versus what it generated.
Give me a speech that a horny bard, male, might give trying to seduce a dragon, female. Be romantic and flattering. Okay.
God.
Oh, radiant sovereign of scales and flame, whose beauty outshines the fiercest dawn, I stand before you, a humble minstrel, yet my heart beats a wild, tempestuous song, a melody only your fiery eyes could ever inspire. Your wings, vast as the heavens, carry the dreams of countless ages, and your voice, a siren's roar, stirs the very air like an intoxicating spell. Let me be the poet to your legend, the fire to your ember, the warmth that lingers long after your breath. For in your presence, even the bravest warrior's courage withers, but my desire only grows, a wildfire, untamed. Come, my dazzling dragoness, let us weave a tale of passion and power, where your fierce grace meets my ardent soul, and together ignite a blaze that the stars themselves will envy. So let me open that drussy. I may have added that last bit.
I think you may have added that last bit.
I thought that was quite good.
Wow.
all in the delivery, obviously.
Yeah. The delivery is like 50% of it, but still, it's just like if you broke out with that at the table, it'd be like everybody would be staring at you going, "Oh."
They would either laugh or applaud.
Yeah.
Or both. Or both.
Rule number 1 of feng shui: don't ask enemies for their names.
Yeah.
You're a filthy video game player who looks at TTRPGs as an attempt to try and get the root of the problems with CPRGs and video game RPG mechanics. I mean, yeah, nerd.
It's not the way around, though.
It is kind of because, and here's the thing, and I've said this with some like major luminaries of the role playing game scene, like Sandy Peterson of Call of Cthulhu, or Mark Reinhagen of Vampire the Masquerade, or Alexander McCree of Axe and Ascendant. As good as your CPRG is, or CRPG, no matter how good it is, no matter how much stuff they let you do, even let's take my favorite one, Cyberpunk 2077. No matter how good it is, no matter how good the combat is, no matter how good the interaction system is, no matter how good the dialogue is and everything, you're still limited because there comes a point where the game mechanics simply don't support whatever it is you wanted to do. Whereas a traditional TTRPG literally has no limits. Like, let's say, after you manage to get back to Dexter Deshawn after, your Compeki Plaza heist went bad and Jackie dies in the car, and you've got, Johnny Silverhand's engram stuck in your head, but it hasn't activated yet. Rather than walk in there to Dexter Deshawn and talk to him, it's like you decide you're going to go lay low and do something else and wait for him to hunt you down if he's going to. Or instead of getting, blindsided by his bodyguard, you could have pulled a different move. You could have had a holdout pistol in your pants or something and shot the guy in the face. Or, gamers are the best people for thinking outside the box. And I say that with all reverence for gamers, because if you give them a puzzle to solve, they'll give you 50 different ways to do it. One of them will be the right one. Whereas you get a computer role-playing gamer to solve a solution, there's only one possible way they can do it, really. I mean, now, sometimes if it's a really complicated game like Cyberpunk, you might have 3 or 4 different options, but it's still reduced to 3 or 4 different options. Not 50, not an infinite number of whatever the player can generate mentally. Because, there's a lot of times I've played CPRPGs and I've thought, I wouldn't have done this. This is not what I would have done. I'd have done this differently, or, man, why didn't they just do this? Or, why do I have to go through these doors that I know are trapped when, I could literally just get a pick and stuff and just chisel through the wall.
Yeah.
Build my own walls through the dungeon instead.
So my eyesight is quite poor. And I really struggle because there are so many things in video games nowadays that are based on being able to see these like really subtle, like there are literally things that my husband is a big video gamer. And I'll be struggling with a section on something and he'll be like, it's right there. And I'm like, what are you pointing at? He's like, it's right there. And I'm like, I can't see anything. There's a way, and I suspect it's also why I have more trouble reading electronically than I do in book format. There's just something about the way video games are put together that my eyes just don't recognize properly. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is like, there'll be a barrier to something and I can't see the barrier and I don't understand why I can't just go from point A to point B. Or, I have this bone. Why can't I just feed it to the dog directly in order to get the dog away from where I need it to be? No, you have to take the dog and you have to take the bone and you have to go over here and you have to use it on this thing and you have to do that. And then you do that and then you get a piece of meat and that you feed to the dog. Those types of things don't make any sense to me. And I think there's a lot less variety. And I mean, a lot of video games nowadays are basically just one of a few types of games that are just kind of put together in a different way. They're either, group combat where you're kind of traveling around like it was a role-playing game, or it's a first-person shooter, or it's a racing game. There's not a whole lot of creativity in my mind these days. It's just better graphics. It's the same games with better graphics.
Yeah, the interesting stuff's all happening in the independents. So
yeah, there are some indie games I really like, but
there's one that Grim and I play called 7 Days to Die, and I'm so obsessed with this game. Like, I've literally wasted 684.1 hours on it. Literally,
I don't have 600 hours.
Well, this is over the course of years.
Yeah.
But the point is, one of the things I like about that game is because it's a crafting survival style game, you literally can build up your fortress any way you want to. You can build up your zombie defense outpost the way you want to. But the other thing too is how you approach missions. Like, if the dude may give me a fetch quest to go get this satchel out of a zombie infested house. But, it doesn't say I have to walk through the front door and fight every zombie in the place and to get to the satchel. Instead, I can stand outside the house, build a ladder and climb my way up to the roof where I know it's at, and then tunnel my way in to the satchel directly and just nab it and leave.
That's nice. I would like that.
Yeah.
Or you can snipe, or you can set fire to the building.
Yeah. You could set fire to the building. You could snipe. You could, if you have a rocket launcher, you could blow the whole building up and then just go sift through the rubble.
I think it's just that, it's more like if you don't like video games, you're probably not going to like video games. Whereas my argument has always been, if you think you don't like role-playing games, you just haven't found the right role-playing game.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think there is a role-playing game for everybody.
My mother raised both both her kids ended up being role players, and she was supportive of it despite the Satanic Panic being in his way at the time. But she never really understood it. She was just happy we were socializing. So at
just-
6, yeah.
Just to Passerby says at 650 hours, those are rookie numbers. Okay, just for comparison, Fallout New Vegas, I have 1,084 hours. Okay.
So my mother at 65, my brother came home for Christmas from California, and wanted to play a game. And she said, well, I want to spend time with him. So she ended up at 65 playing her first role-playing game. And afterwards I said, what did you think? And she gave me this very disgruntled look and said, that was way more fun than I thought it was going to be. So, like, even people who've never played at any point, like, if you find the right game, hopefully everyone can have a good time.
Yeah,
hopefully
you can win them over.
Yep.
Spread role playing like a zombie virus.
Mm-hmm. and okay,
without the biting.
Yes. And here's an interesting argument kind of bursting out in chat. Okay, so Kit says the difference between CPRPGs and TTRPGs is that in the latter you can choose to ignore the whole quest to get the satchel and it impacts the game not one whit. That's true. I mean, but yeah, as Tona Glandier points out, ignoring the main quest in a TTRPG is a dick move to the GM who prepared stuff. Yeah, it is. And that's almost a topic for a whole show, is to talk about, players who deliberately go against the grind and don't want to do what you want. And they're purposely doing it. They're purposely trying to snub every single thing that you give them. And the worst ones I hate is you throw out all kinds of stuff for them. You don't necessarily stick it in their face. You don't force them to do it. It's just like, hey, you see a guy, getting beaten by a guard. Do you want to do anything? Or you see, a piece of a spaceship sticking up out of the ground not too far away. Do you want to do anything? Or you see a smoking wreckage nearby. Do you want to, And you got these players who just will steadfastly refuse to get engaged with any of that stuff. But at the end of the session, they have the balls to say, well, it was kind of boring.
Okay, yeah, that would piss me off.
Yeah.
But as far as the not engaging with stuff, I had this discussion with a friend of mine, and he said, the best game I ever had was the GM gave us this, like, world-ending, we have to save the world thing. And we decided we were going to go be merchants instead. And it was a lot of fun. And I was like, I would totally let you do that in a game, but the world would end.
Be the richest guys at the end of the world.
Because the world would continue on without you. And if you refused, the call to, what do they call it? The call to heroism or something like that. You can do that. You have free will, but the world will end.
Yeah.
The monsters exist outside you. The NPCs exist outside you in my games. If you piss off an NPC or you ignore them or you treat them badly, they're going to remember that.
Well, there's the thing. There is a tabletop role-playing game that actually does kind of take that into account. It's called Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Yes, I love that game. That's one of my favorite games to run.
Yeah. And in that one, the world is definitely going to end because at some point the Demon Lord is going to come back and then it's the game is over no matter what.
Yep, I love that game. It's also great to teach new players on. It's a very good system for that. The title makes some people uncomfortable, but
yes and no, Kit. There's a certain thrill for GMs in handling the curve. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, except, when the player decides that, he wants his character to be like 100% of an incel in the worst possible way. And it's just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, that is just cringy.
Yeah.
But we were talking earlier about players that, are uncomfortable with like looking silly. Like some of the best players I've had were ones that. So, first game I ever ran was an early edition of Cult.
Ooh.
And I ran it because there was a guy who joined the college gaming group, which meant we couldn't toss him out. And he was, class clown, practical joker guy. And his whole thing was to disrupt games as much as possible.
Oh, I hate people like that.
And he'd get himself killed in the most, ridiculous way possible, mess up the whole game, get the whole party killed off, and then you'd have to start all over. And it got to the point where nobody wanted to run because we couldn't not let him in because it was a college organization. So I ran Cult specifically because, the whole thing is death is only the beginning. And I said, the rule is unless your character dies, you cannot make a new character. And then I gave him an immortal character.
Huh.
And within 3 sessions, he was a quadriplegic.
Mm.
And he said, I want to make a new character. And I said, you're not dead yet. And he said, but I can't do anything. And I said, you'll heal eventually.
Yeah, you'll get better.
And he had to stop. If he wanted to participate at all, he had to start thinking about what he was doing because he couldn't physically do stuff. And so he ended up becoming like the team planner guy, and he was really good at it. He just had never tried before because he was too busy worrying about, he's the class clown so that he didn't look silly. And he became a very, very good role player. So like sometimes taking those things and turning them back on people is really a good way to make the game go better.
Kit he's talking, he's not arguing with Tonic Landry, but he says there's no accounting for sociopaths and narcissists, but I've seen what happens when a game makes too much effort to manage this. Called Pathfinder Society play, and it sucks. Yes, I've been there, and I remember it was like there were so many things that were prohibited and that you weren't allowed to do, and it was just kind of like if you showed up to 3 sessions, you got an experience level, but the game reset after you hit level 3, and you had to bring in whole new characters and start all over again because the game never got beyond level 3 because it's Pathfinder Society for some reason. I'm serious.
That sounds terrible. What is this nonsense?
That's Pathfinder Society. That's the way it was. And we had a guy who insisted on running it that way, and we had fun with it, but it was always annoying to me because it would be like brand new Pathfinder's source book would drop, and I'd want to play something out of it, and he'd be like, well, they're not in the approved list yet. So I'd have to wait.
Yeah. Similar experience with the Camarilla LARP Society.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. They didn't like anybody playing anything, pretty much. And certain people made it their job to deny other people anything, even slightly exotic or interesting. So,
how did it even work? I mean, it's like by the nature alone, I would figure everybody who wanted to play a Malkavian would be.
A lot of them were annoying, and you saw a lot of the similar type, but they were one of the core clans. So they couldn't really stop people playing them. But they banned certain kinds of trauma that may have made the Malkavian. Yeah, they just, I don't know. They just wanted to control everything and gatekeep it behind increasingly Byzantine rules and favors about who could play what. So, yeah. I don't think they understood the concept that like the stereotypes are an average, not the individual. Sorry, go.
Oh no, I was just I was busy being horrified. That's all.
Well, I've seen the reverse happen though, because I used to be a Society for Creative Anachronism fighter way back in the day when I was much younger, and we had strict codes of conduct and rules and ways of addressing each other and stuff like that. I mean, we still kind of role played. I mean, basically it was basically LARP, but it wasn't called LARP. But, it was nice. It was respectful, and it had its moments. And of course, we got to beat the shit out of each other with with weapons and stuff, and watch each other get their arms broken, and I would come home covered in bruises. But it was fun. So many years later, I'm in my 40s, and I asked my girlfriend at the time, I said, do you want to try checking out an SCA event and seeing what it's like now? It could be fun to get into that again. She said, sure. So we drove out to an event, and
it's kind of terrible now.
It's kind of terrible now. Yeah. It's like nobody addresses each other with any of that kind of formality. Everybody just kind of literally dresses up in cosplay. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, it's basically a Ren fair now. It's like there's no historical accuracy concern at all. Now it's the history the way it should have been is the new thing.
And the idea is that this brings in more people, is it?
No, the idea is we are uncomfortable with talking about slavery or anything else uncomfortable that might have happened in history.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're just going to deny any of it happened and stick to, oh yeah, and no one's ever going to play a peasant. Everyone is royalty.
Yeah.
Except that one guy who chooses to play the peasant.
Well, and then there's the
yeah, like when I was looking at getting into it, I was going to be a merchant, and that it would have made me like the lowest person on the totem. It's like I was going to be a coffee merchant.
I was going to be a merchant, but yeah, it's just like, you show up and it's like they kept some of the fun parts, like where you get together at night and drink and stuff, but it's not in character, and it's just nothing to it. I mean, you could still fight if you wanted to, but even that seemed like it was a little watered down from what it used to be.
And then there's the whole part about, the king murdering his girlfriend a couple years ago.
I don't remember that part, but that was a couple of years ago. I was out of it. So.
You missed that one? Yeah. Well, I was too, but I still know people, and like literally the guy who was, had been voted in because you vote in your kings.
Yeah. And the king is not necessarily. Well, actually, and here's the part that blows my mind, Grim. We were there when a king and a queen got coronated, but they were not in character married or anything else. So they were two completely separate people from two completely separate lives who had nothing to do with each other, who were king and queen. And I'm just kind of like, you guys aren't like sleeping together or doing anything?
That's pretty authentic to medieval nobility, though.
I guess.
A marriage of political convenience.
In this particular case, the king was married to his queen, had a girlfriend on the side, told the girlfriend that he and the queen had a polyamorous lifestyle.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of that.
Turns out they didn't. Oh, wait. Turns out the queen didn't know anything about this. And he and the girlfriend ended up having a fight over this, and he killed her.
Now I will say that is something I never got involved in, either as a younger player and as an older one. But I did hear rumors there was a lot of polyamorous.
Oh yeah, tons of it.
Yeah, stuff going on at SCA events and a lot of wife swapping and all this other stuff. And I'm just kind of like, I never.
There's definitely something about LARP that attracts the poly crowd. Yeah, more power to them. But
I mean, I didn't know. I didn't care. I was showing up. I was young. I was showing up there to beat the shit out of other people and get the shit beaten out of me. And that was my main goal for fun.
Your kink. That
was my kink. Beat the shit out of me on a field with a piece of rattan. I enjoy bruises.
That's frighteningly specific.
I didn't enjoy bruises. I had to go to the doctor at least one time and explain why there was a muscle in my arm that was crushed because somebody had hit it with a shield.
Yeah, the saying, don't judge people for their kinks. It's up to the consenting 3 adults and a sheep that are involved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Night in the
Oh, yeah.
streets, knave in the sheets.
As long as it harm nobody, do what thou will, I guess. Anyway.
Or, as long as it doesn't non-consensually harm anyone.
There you go. That's the more proper way, I guess. But anyway, shall we close up for the day? It's 1:26, or we're an hour and 26 minutes in, and I've still got a show tonight too, so I've got some more fun things to talk about.
I think we're good.
Toad, I'm sure you could use a break, and Grim, how's your butt?
This is the lowest pain day I've had for a couple of years, to be honest. So I'm doing okay today.
Nice. Awesome.
The power of Dungeons and Discussions is healing you.
That must be it. Yes.
Must be it. Well, all right, everybody out there in YouTube land, thank you very much for hanging out with us, and thank you for hanging out with us on X as well, because we're double broadcasting now just as an experiment, and my viewership is through the roof. I kind of wish more of y'all would tip, but little things. At the very least, subscribe when you come over to YouTube and subscribe. But thank y'all very much for hanging out with us. I hope you enjoyed.
Even if you're going to watch on X, just hit the subscribe button for the numbers. Make the algorithm happy.
Yeah,
Feed the algorithm.
Yes.
And if
yes.
you're a dragon and you were seduced by my rhetoric, hit me up on Twitter in my DMs.
Yeah, he's. I think Grim has an only DMs.
Look, the Dungeons and Dragons ride!